You are listening to the Nosy Dragon. I am your dungeon master / innkeeper, Jussun. I am joined by my players / patrons, Ben.
Hello there, Ben is I.
And Josh.
That would be me. How are you doing?
In today's session, we're going to be talking all about Session 0.
All right.
Howdy, guys.
Howdy.
I'm
How diddly we
doing
do.
quite fine in this fine here establishment, I must say. It's mustier than I remember.
Welcome to the tavern.
It's a beautiful place you got here. A fine rustic vibe.
Yep, it was on sale.
Oh.
That's always good. That's what you want to hear about a property.
Yeah. Last tavern owner was killed by adventurers, apparently.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Big string of that in the area, huh?
He slightly insulted one of them.
Oh yeah. You never want to do that. Never want to do that.
Absolutely
Lost an uncle
not.
like that.
Oh.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, our first topic, Session 0, we thought would be appropriate as our first episode because it's the first thing you do. Session 0.
Yeah.
It's only fitting.
Only fitting, yeah.
It's the appropriate place to start.
So, speaking of where to start on Session 0 on the topic. I think I think it's not as, I don't know. I don't think it's as common as I feel like it should be in a lot of D&D communities. I feel like it's an easy thing that a lot of players skip, or a lot of groups skip, because I think already it can be hard to find the time. But I think we're here to say that it's absolutely worth having a Session 0.
Oh my god, yeah.
I think there's a lot of assumptions, that well, the other people, they're like my friends and stuff, so they probably have the same likes and interests and things that are okay and whatever, and so it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It will not be fine. The issue comes with a lot of people having certain ideas about how D&D is or how it's played based on their own interactions and experiences, but every campaign is different, and what your dungeon master has in mind and what each player has in mind doesn't always align.
Yeah, so I think that's a good topic to kind of talk about. What I think, the big points of Session 0 are kind of setting the expectation for what your campaign, what the setting, what the tone, what the campaign is going to be like.
Yeah. So as far as what expectations look like, I would say it's like, okay, guys, we're doing a low fantasy, which means not so much. There's not really magic. Maybe if there is magic, it's very, very sparse. And we're not doing any high fantasy creatures. So no magical monsters and such. We might have, orcs, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, but one of the players wasn't super keen on, or didn't realize that, and they made a Monster Hunter Ranger multi-classed into wizard, and then now they're very out of place.
I'm a centaur wizard. What?
Yeah, that'd be me. That definitely be
exactly.
Me.
I'm a fish inside of a fishbowl that is inside of a magical trench coat.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also another topic of on the topic of expectations is the tone of the campaign you're trying to start. Whether it's going to be sort of serious or goofy. Recently, I ran just a short kind of haunted house campaign for some friends.
Ooh.
And I had sort of this idea that it would be sort of dark, kind of Resident Evil, spooky vibe. But I think a lot of the players wanted to just sort of have a fun, goofy time. And not that there's anything wrong with that. And I think we sort of found our way as we played. But
yeah.
I think there was that immediate disconnect between the vibe I was trying to set and what kind of my players expected, and a Session 0 to sort of, I think that falls more on my part of not being more clear in that Session 0 about what the tone I was trying to set for the story was.
That's why we're here. I mean, you can't know that.
Yeah.
You can't know if you should do a session 0 right or not unless you do a couple bad session 0s. I'm sure we've all had our fair share.
Yeah, but those big expectations about like tone, setting, and I think one, and this one is more like if you're the DM and you already kind of have your idea of what you want, you have your world made up, or maybe you're running a module. Like what is that? What's the world that you're building like? You know? And I think Justin touched on this too, like how is magic seen? And I think we've played before where, you know, like it's magic is sort of restricted or something like that. And then one of the players, I think I've even done this where I was a sorcerer in a world where or magic was sort of like not really like social, like politically, I don't know, maybe not politically right, but it was like socially
Magic
accepted.
was taboo.
Magic was taboo. Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
those are, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, because also if you make like a joke character and the campaign is, you know, you're trying to do like a real campaign, like guys, like please don't just make like, you know, Bonzo the clown.
Yeah.
He's a bard, rogue, cleric, fighter. It's like
Yeah.
what
Bard,
is,
rogue.
He's a barbarian druid. That's, you know, some
Yeah, and he's got like a
animal
loony
familiars.
catchphrase or
good
I don't
berries on my nose. Wanna bite?
yeah, and then the other players just make murder hobos.
Yeah, so it's kind of like realism versus fantasy. Like, are you going for a medieval campaign or are you going for a fantasy D&D campaign? Right, because fantasy almost has nothing to do with the medieval. Like
Exactly.
things are
Yeah,
it's
all
so
over
funny.
the place.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
so closely
There are-
associated to each other, but it's very, very different.
Yeah. Like it's like the kind of technology is all over. It's like, oh yeah, there's swords and bows and arrows and that dwarf over there has a gun for some reason.
Yeah. We have a horse and buggy, and also gnome tinkerers built sky cities, but you know we don't really talk about it.
Yeah, so it's like fantasy kind of makes no sense. Also, there's like eras of weapons. It's like I heard that some people get upset about like katanas being in D&D because they're like that's a totally different era, and you know medieval is this and this stuff and that, and it's like okay, but also like the flail was used in a completely different time period than you know the bastard sword or whatever. So it's like
yeah. And if you're talking about like using a halberd and like I don't know a falchion at the same time, it's a little like not historically accurate.
Your studded leather armor. Studded leather armor is completely fake.
Completely fake. Makes no sense in reality. No one has ever worn leather armor, but it's the only thing people in movies and TV and
are you saying that by slapping leather on my body I don't get +1 to my armor class?
No, the leather is fine. It's
the leather works. It's the cost.
Studs. Studded leather armor is fake. The studs in leather armor make it worse and more dangerous for the wearer. And there's no recorded history
actually
of
makes sense.
Leather armor ever having studs in it. Also, for the most part, leather armor was not really a thing people did. It was stuff that went under their armor, like under their chainmail.
Yeah.
Or under like certain type of quilting.
In the place that most like leather armor would serve in a realistic historical setting, they were wearing gambesons and padded armor, you know, like many layers of linen or cotton. So anyways, that's getting nerdy now.
Setting out like if you've got a problem with, you know, what our armor looks like, get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to anyway. Or maybe you're doing a very realistic campaign, and
that's important for your players and for everyone.
Knowledge. We need it.
It's got to be specified at the very beginning of the campaign, for sure.
And then also at session 0, we've been sort of talking about like the kind of, you know, like the DM sort of setting up their expectations or what they're setting they're hoping to play, like letting the players know what that's like. But I think also something that's really important about session 0 is the group can be very collaborative. So it's also a great time for everyone to communicate what they want to get out of this campaign and what they are hoping to play, because maybe the DM is like, oh, I really want to have this low fantasy, super intense. And all the characters are like, well, we want to be Bozo the Clown and the Bozo Clown Gang. And then
it's totally true.
Yeah.
You show up with your Grim Hollow campaign ready to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's like, oh, we kind of wanted to do Eberron kind of stuff. Like, we're really excited to that new book, and then we all made Warforges, and it's like
yeah.
So session 0 should be where you talk about what's going to happen in the campaign. You talk about the setting, right? You talk about what kind of whether you want like light versus dark, if you want the campaign to be super deadly, or if you want it to be like kind of, pull punches, kind of what is it like, how is magic seen, all that kind of stuff. That's really important. And then the players need to voice what kind of characters they want to play, and how they're going to fit together. Session 0, you shouldn't have brought a character. Session 0 is to talk about, next week in session 1, what character will I bring?
Exactly.
Now, obviously, if you have a character you've been dying to play and it only would fit in a particular kind of setting, the session 0 is the time to bring it up. Hey guys, can we, I've been wanting to do Spelljammer content forever. Can I play a Githyanki that, shoots lasers out of a gun?
Yeah, exactly.
Time to bring it up, and it's like, we can fit that in. Like, we'll do some patchwork stuff, or, dude, I'm not down. I'm not down at all.
Yeah, and it's good too, because the group can be very like, they can voice all their opinions, because it can be like one player wants to play this Githyanki Spelljammer, but then everyone else is like, well, we were hoping to be like knights, or like, a group of paladins. Yeah. And then
we'll all be dwarf rangers.
or a group of high elf paladins called the Sword of Amber. Sword of Amber.
Yeah.
Or possibly a band of kobolds, chefs, desperately cooking. Anyway, that's not a self-insert. I swear.
But
then it's a good time to go over if everyone's in agreement and the Dungeon Master's setting is accepted, then it's time to talk about lore and things like that, and work out how you guys can work together to make your characters have like shared backstories and stuff. I think shared backstories is really essential. And then also a good time as a dungeon master to kind of hear what your players are looking for from this campaign. Like, what's their wish? What do they wish to occur at some point?
That's big, because no matter what D&D campaign that I've played, every player kind of has a sort of thing or niche that they enjoy the most, whether it's like combat or like puzzles that the DM sets up, whether they really enjoy the role play or it's world exploration.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone has a sort of thing that they enjoy the most out of D&D, and it's a chance for everyone to kind of gauge like what they want the most of in their campaign, what's to be the focus.
It's true. And in our group that we play with, we're a super role play focused group. That's like where that's like and I think when a lot of players enter, like oftentimes we'll have people come in, and I think a lot of newer players especially are more interested and excited in combat, because that's like the more traditional game.
Well, it's all the characters. Your whole character sheet is all combat.
It's all combat,
maybe 5 to 10% of it is your skills, and that's it. Like everything else is combat. Most of your spells, unless you're like an illusion wizard, most of your spells are going to be combat related, damage, crowd control. So it's just kind of like, when you level up, you get more HP.
Exactly.
For fighting.
Yeah.
So, most of what your character sheet is designed to do is to fight and kill and survive. And so if you only play, role playing, and that's not really your vibe, what you came for, it can be kind of boring and disappointing.
It's true.
Vice versa. If you kind of don't like combat.
Exactly. And two, what can be frustrating is if you're not super clear on what the expectation of like roleplay versus the dynamic between roleplay and combat in the group, then you build your character super combat or super roleplay focused. Especially sucks. You're like, you've put everything into roleplay, and then you suddenly get into combat and you're useless, and it's like, oh god, this makes up a huge percent of our thing, and I can't do anything. You know?
I've had characters like that, but because I knew I was going into it like that, I was totally fine with it.
And that's totally like that's
Yeah.
totally fine too, and that just
It's all
comes back
about
to like
choices.
it's so important to have a space where everyone can talk about it so that when the game actually starts, people are more or less on the same page
Yeah.
about where things are going, because it can, without a session 0, it can be such a rocky start to your game. And those first couple sessions, I feel like, are so important, because that's like most campaigns and most groups don't make it past those first couple sessions.
Exactly. Speaking on that
Not
point,
to be dark, but
no, it's
that's
true.
like that's why it's important. And also I think session 0, kind of on like a outside of the game perspective, when everyone is like collaborating and discussing about what they want, what they expect, what they're hoping to get, and what exactly the game is going to be like, there's more investment for the players and for the DM
absolutely.
to make this game work, which I think is kind of an underappreciated part of what makes session 0 so useful.
Yeah. If you have a certain NPC you're waiting to meet, or if you have, if your characters, the two players are entwined, their characters are entwined in some way, and both of them have a secret about the other person that the other person doesn't know, then you're like waiting for in time to mention that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be really cool. So like easy ways to make your characters siblings, or cousins, or
like old acquaintances, or like we fought in the war.
Yeah.
And I think
job related, like, oh, I'm the bodyguard to this prince.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
And or you're in a guild together or something like that. Some sort of shared history, or perhaps your enemies that are stuck together because of something, and then you grow into allies, right? Like, one of you committed a crime, and somehow the other person who was just an innocent bystander got connected to it, and now you're both on the run together.
Oh,
that's a phenomenal like opener. And I think that's something that I think is so important, like about session 0 especially, is like, I think it's so helpful in a campaign if it doesn't have to be every party, but if you have someone in the party that you have like a connection, because that makes like your role play, that makes your arc and your story so much more. And that's session 0 is a perfect time to be like, oh, this is like who I was. I guess a good example is the campaign we're playing right now. Me and another player both were like, we want to play Bugbears. We're hoping to play Bugbears, and we had different reasons for it. The other guy just liked how long their reach was, and I thought I just always wanted to play like kind of a goblinoid creature like that. And anyways, then because we both had that hope, we kind of created this interlocked brothers relationship that became so crucial to our characters. And I think session 0 is like a perfect time to do that, and I think that is such a useful and fun thing to include in your campaigns, is those like close connections between players.
Yeah.
That's
we could do a whole episode just talking about
creating relationships.
Maybe
we'd have to get Matt as our guest.
Oh,
that's another player who's very in our group, who's very to the family and the NPC trees. But I think another thing that's good to talk about is like the importance, especially as like new players and even as veterans, of session 0, like understanding the expectations of your group. If you're like new to the group, I think if anyone has any like thing to say about that.
Yeah, I think something like, so for our the three of us, we all play together, and for our most recent campaign, something we set up in our session 0 was having a safe word for when we're going on a tangent, we need to bring it back.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That was something that completely came out of our session 0. Like it was never something we had talked about ever before.
Yeah.
And it was something about like, oh well, this time we're gonna have less time on our hands, so like let's make more of it.
Yeah.
Of the time we have, and so we came up with a safe word to use when we're going off at a tangent, because we just constantly did that.
Still do.
I think that's something huge that came out of our session 0 that has been so helpful and like
Yeah.
It's so ingrained in our gameplay now. It's just kind of like common
Yeah.
practice.
but
it happens
feels
every
like we
time.
always did it.
But those expectations at the table are so good. You know, like beyond what's happening within the role play or within, you know, the theater of the mind, you like there are expectations and that the group has or what would want to have at the table, and that's a really good example is like our safe word for getting back or stopping these like tangents or discussions we go on.
Speaking of safe words, there's another thing you can set up in your session 0, just kind of letting everyone know that they can kind of do this, and it's called like the X card. And so it's this thing that if you're becoming a dungeon master on this website called Start Playing, not a sponsor,
Not yet.
they
fingers
they,
crossed.
they tell your dungeon they tell you as a dungeon master how to use this thing called like the X card. And basically, if a player if something is happening at the table that makes a player uncomfortable, like let's say they didn't know to tell you they didn't want this in the game because they just didn't think about it, and then now that it's happening, they're like, God, I'm really uncomfortable with this.
Yeah.
Right? Like let's say rape, right?
Yeah,
A really
that's a big
extreme
one.
example. But if that's happening and it's like not even to their character, but it's just happening and it's like a painful thing that they definitely do not want in their role play experience, they can say like, yo, X card. And that there's with X card, there's no asking why or whatever. You can ask like, what's the X card for? Just so that you know what to take out.
Yeah.
Right. And then you pause the game. You can rewind or fast forward past the scenes. You can rewind and then do it again without whatever that thing was.
Yeah.
Or you can fast forward and just skip past it. Or you can, you know, whatever works in that moment, whatever makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So setting up how to use an X card. If you're using a virtual tabletop, you can like have an X card, like a thing you throw onto the table. If you're playing in physically, perhaps you can have like a little paddle that you can pick up, or you just say X card. Or if you're playing, you know, and you have a chat, like if you're playing through Discord, if you're playing on Roll20, you can just say in the chat like X card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. I mean, number one, the goal of Dungeons and Dragons is to have fun. And if you're in an environment and you're having situations,
for me to have fun. Forgot.
No,
I know.
There are other people here too, Mr. Innkeeper.
But it's such a good point, and to like
innkeeper, no, gatekeeper. Gatekeeper.
Exactly. But that's a really good point about like also in session 0, it's such an important time to establish like, you know, rules like that, but also it's a good time to go over like what are things that players are comfortable with and what are things players are uncomfortable with. Because
like I'm not comfortable with player versus player.
Yeah, right. And that's something that's a hard and fast rule we have in all of our campaigns.
Yeah, it's just something because it's ended many a campaign. That's why
that is a campaign killer right there. Is PC
it can be.
PC.
I have a great example of this actually. I was starting a campaign, and someone, I'm not naming names here, but someone wanted to create a character that was a rogue. And they like straight off session 0 were like, I want to be able to steal from other players. And
I did that once. Oh wait, you're talking about me.
Yeah, not naming names.
I didn't want to explicitly
no, it's
say.
fine.
But
I'm proud of this.
Yeah, but it's a perfect example.
I asked for consent. That's why. Yeah.
You did, which was the perfect thing to do. And as soon as you did, everyone was like, no,
we are not having that.
Actually, when you told me that idea, I wasn't against it to begin with. I wanted to see what other people had to say, but like the initial
that's something
idea
too.
is it can create a lot of fun intrigue to have like a sabotage.
I just wanted to play a kleptomaniac who's just constantly stealing everything with reckless abandon for no reason. And I was like, this is going to be so much fun. I'm going to love it. And like nobody wanted to play with that rogue. Absolutely. So it's like, oh, okay, fine. Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to play with my bipolar, schizophrenic, kleptomaniac rogue. Why not?
What's wrong with you? What's the deal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a good time that came up. And that's sort of like I guess another thing to bring up is like kind of still on that topic of like table expectations, but when we were playing in person before COVID, a rule that we had was like no smartphone, like no phones. You couldn't use your phone ever. So we would like make a phone tower at the beginning of the game, and that was just like a table rule that we had, that like kind of like, and it's different
just
for
so
each group.
easy to get distracted.
So easy to get distracted.
Yeah, it's just so easy to get distracted because, especially in combat, it's not your turn, and you're just like, let me just look up, and then you get totally lost, and then it's like, all right, Josh, your turn. You're like, huh?
Oh, what? Yeah, what am I gonna? Yeah, exactly.
I rolled a hit.
Exactly.
Like, we're not fighting anything. This is
Yeah.
And yeah,
the boss. The boss is currently flying really high up, and he's gonna land in a few. How did you not?
we're out of initiative order.
Okay, the floating crystals are coming towards you. I'm asking, it's your turn because you need to figure out which crystals you want to hit or what. And it's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to mention,
some groups or some tables are okay with that because some player it's like I don't know, looser vibe, or maybe you have a much larger group.
What were you trying to say, Ben?
I was just trying to say, like, if you've ever been a DM before or Plan 2, when you're hitting a super emotionally powerful story beat with either you and one particular character, or maybe even the whole party, and you see someone's on your phone, like, that hurts. That hits.
Yeah, that's really
rough. Maybe you should have like a word like spotlight.
Yeah, exactly. Which is something that you would come up in session 0.
And like spotlight could mean like, pay attention to what's happening and don't interrupt.
Yeah, that's actually a very good rule. If anyone wants to take that for their campaigns, that's free.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah, I just made that up, and I'm taking it into my game tomorrow.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect idea.
We're going to introduce Spotlight.
Kind of on that same vein, the good time to talk about home rules too is session 0, because we have quite a few home rules.
I've done quite a different varieties of home rules in session 0s. Like Ben, you had a home rule when we did your campaign about like kind of like, it's cool if it's really cool, you can get situational advantage or something.
Yes.
Oh yeah, like it's like if you come up,
cinematic advantage is what it's called.
Cinematic advantage.
So you essentially, I picked this up a little while back. Someone had introduced it to me, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I like to run my campaigns a little bit looser, not so rules heavy. And so if someone wants to try doing something that would be like really cool using the environment, like a creative strategy, I would give them a DC, like a skill DC, and if they pass that skill DC, then they would get advantage.
Or they could do something too, like you're like, oh, I want to try to jump on top of this monster and like, like grab a rope and like pull him over, something like that.
Exactly.
So then you can through your like cinematic description, you can gain, you could like knock this player prone, even though you don't have a spell or action that
roleplay within combat.
Yeah, and being more creative. I think that's a really good home rule, but like
another one was like crunchy criticals.
Oh yeah.
What? Yeah, what was that one?
Crunchy criticals was just like super hard damage. So basically, crunchy criticals were when you rolled a crit, you could either double the amount of damage you just rolled for, or you could roll double the damage dice, which isn't that much.
No,
more.
I thought it was like with your initial damage that you would have done otherwise, it was maxed out, and then you would roll a second one on top of that.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, that's what it was. Okay,
so then it's like you did crazy.
Yeah, so
crunchy criticals were
okay, yeah, that's what it was. Crunchy criticals was whatever your max damage output would be, you got that, and then you rolled one additional damage. So like you did max, because the idea was like, it sucks if you roll a critical and then you roll 2 nat 1s on your d12s.
Yeah,
and it's like, great, I crit and did 2 damage with my bonus.
Yeah.
And my strength 5 of 7, a 5. It's just so disappointing. So it's like, okay, you do 12 damage. Now roll another d12 and let's see if you get, some extra critical damage. And that really but also the NPCs had crunchy criticals. Also,
It's gotta
if
go
you
both
rolled a
ways.
nat 1 on a saving throw, it was critical, right? So that
Yeah,
meant,
that was it was critical failures and critical success. Yeah.
for like damage types for like line spells and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah, we had a and that also was crazy because I think we had like a huge boss fight that we'd been building to the BBGE of the whole campaign, and like we like killed him like before he even got a turn or something. It was
Twin spelled a line spell. You can't.
yeah,
you can't
twin
do
spell.
that.
We made
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we made a mistake, but like it was just and then there was the bad guy rolled a critical failure on
Yeah.
his. It was like max damage. It was like lightning bolt from like 9th level or something. It was insane.
2 lightning bolts.
I
Two
feel
lightning
like
bolts from 9th level.
sometimes
It was
the
stupid.
dice, they just say it, you know? It's like,
They
nope,
just-
this
yeah.
is meant to happen.
Yeah.
This is too much of a
Yeah, I
coincidence
mean,
to
no
let it
regrets
slide.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that can also just flat out kill you. So it was really scary. So it's like, do you want this? Because it's a lot of fun, but also can be a lot
Yeah,
of
we did
fun.
have like I think we did have like players going down and like their first time getting hit. Was,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. So yeah, just kind of discussing home rules and stuff like that.
yeah, and what you want to play with, because some groups you don't want to play with any, and others it's like
Yeah.
you have a lot, or there's some that you're like I really want to play. One player's like I really want to play with this home rule.
Also, some
That's
campaigns
perfect time to pick it up.
like as far as back to like the phones and stuff, like things we do at the table we don't do at the table, like you know, some groups they only play D&D if everyone's tipsy.
yeah,
But at my table it's like, nah, no drinking.
yeah. Since it's such a role, yeah,
Everyone
I
be
think that's,
sober and present. Thank you.
yeah,
But also, if you're like doing a really relaxed, fun, like silly, low, you know, high energy or laid
like
back,
low stress,
fun,
yeah.
kind of more fun focused campaign where it's totally fine to like, you know, just let loose and be silly, and everyone, you know, has a few
Yeah.
beers and that's fine. But
Yeah, but if you I don't know, if you go to one or the other expecting the opposite, then you usually do not have a very good time, and the people around you as well. So
Yeah.
that's like it's just so, and I think we just keep
It's
getting back
session
to that.
zero.
It's
It's session
so
zero.
important that everyone gets on the same page about what exactly the game that everyone's going to be playing is.
yeah, and like it's on the line of like X cards, you want to talk about, and again, this is stolen from the website. Start playing.
Not
their
sponsored yet. Fingers
boundaries
crossed.
Yep.
their boundary section, lines and veils, and it's kind of like, oh, this is a line for me and I don't want it to be crossed, right? So if
Yeah.
if the line for you is like, I don't want to like hear just depictions of like decapitation, like
Yeah. Or
you can say that, you know, you can make a sound effect or say his, you know, loses his head or something, but like I don't want to hear you describe your blade as it, you know, digs through someone's neck, like
yeah.
for whatever reason. That's fine. Or like, let's say someone is like, oh, I have a veil, and so we'll explain what they mean. It's like, oh, I have a veil of like, I don't want to do decapitation as a veil, please. And so basically a veil is like, I'm fine with it happening, I just don't want it described, right? And then a line is like, it just can't happen. It's like, no, please, no decapitation in this campaign. I have trauma, like I'm not, and I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
you
where a
shouldn't,
veil is
if
kind of like,
it's
it's fine with it happening, but I'd rather not
I'd rather not see it.
have it
Yeah.
gorily described, you know.
Yeah. So true.
I
I think,
struggle
you know-
with that. I always love doing depictions in combat.
Yeah,
'cause I
the
feel
depictions
like
are great, but you know, there might be a depiction that you're not really so interested in, like someone's penis description, or
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
someone wanting
yeah.
to do a graphic sex scene with their NPC, you know.
They're
cohort.
yeah, and then people might not be so comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So
or
that's
your
a-
dungeon master is doing that. Like your dungeon master is like, and then the succubus unbuttons her shirt. And it's like, okay, dude.
Yeah, that's more than enough.
Skip.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh man. Yeah. So just kind of setting those things. So it's like, what are your boundaries? And then basically if someone at the table has a boundary, then you know, that's a boundary now set for everybody. And
Yeah.
then if someone has, you know, a veil, it's like whichever one, the lines always take priority. So just that's the standard is the line, and then a veil is, you know, something we do for everyone. So like an example of what a veil would look like is you say, and we'll go ahead and we'll fade to the next morning for like a sexual encounter. Like, so the bard goes upstairs with the innkeeper's daughter, and we'll just kind of fade on that. All right. So, it's tomorrow morning, whatever. Or, you know, you raise your sword above the king's head. And, all right, we'll go and fade to the next, thing. We're now at the funeral or whatever. Or you guys are running from the guards.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason, that's a thing that you don't want to talk about. And there are all kinds of things that can be hard for someone that just don't make sense. And that's the other thing with lines and veils. If someone goes, hey, this is a line for me, if they bring it up in the session, it's totally fine. You're not allowed to pressure them to like tell you why. You can just ask them like, what is the thing that's the line? And it's like, oh, my character being groped by the guard. That's a line for me. And it's like, okay, got it. We'll move forward without that happening or whatever. But not like, why? It's not a big deal, man. Like, that's not acceptable.
No.
Absolutely not.
I mean,
absolutely.
realistically, in a campaign setting, if you're all friends and you're all coming together to play a game, then, of course people would understand, like, there are lines that people wouldn't want to play. Or wouldn't want to cross in their play. And if you do have someone who's like pushing those boundaries or crossing those questions, maybe you don't want to be playing D&D with them. Just saying. You might want to.
That's true. I mean, if they're like
find a different group member.
But I think that's the lines and veils conversation is really good, because a lot of times with things like that, where maybe a player will come to the DM personally and be like, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with this. I don't want this to like come up in our campaign. Oftentimes people like put they just think, oh, that's like for the DM, but to talk about that in the session 0 with everyone is really important, because like those things that this player, like those hard lines that player does not want crossed, everyone should be held accountable to that. Like every player. So the players shouldn't be like, well, I go up to this, like maid at the bar and I'm like feeling her up. That's like, if that's a hard line for one of the players, that shouldn't be something. Like the player should know beforehand that is something that won't be acceptable in this game.
Player versus player combat, but also player versus player flirting.
Yeah, exactly. And and that's the thing. That's like another perfect thing to bring up is like sometimes people are really uncomfortable with that. You know?
Because like someone at the table has an actual crush at another person at the table, and they're trying to live this fantasy out through their NPCs, through their characters, and they're like, my barbarian walks up to your sorcerer and says, wow, I can see that you've got a lot of knowledge, but it looks like it's stored in your chest. It's like, dude, I don't feel like you're flirting with my character. I've described my character as having a flat chest, and you are currently looking at my actual breasts in real life. So I feel like
just really exactly.
Or potentially worse, you're a man playing a female character and another player is like hard flirting with your female character.
That might just not be something you're comfortable with.
Dude, what are you doing?
And for some group, like, and that's like those are really important things, especially like those hard lines, and like what am I as like comfortable with in this campaign are really like those are things that are like genuinely like important to bring up in a session 0.
On a more positive note,
positive.
There's also from Start Playing, not a sponsor.
Not yet, fingers crossed.
In the Dungeon Master guidelines, for things set in a session 0, they talked about stars and wishes, right? So at the end of the campaign, you talk about your stars and wishes, and this is just something you'd introduce, like, hey guys, would you be interested in doing this? During your session 0, you'd bring it up, and what stars is a moment that for you was really awesome. So like, oh man, a star for me tonight was, when I got to grope the innkeeper. Oh, that was so fun. And a wish for me would be if I got to flirt with the other girl at the table more. Not her character, her in real life. That'd be fantastic. Right. I'm just being silly. I'm just giving dumb examples, but it's like, exactly. When I jumped off of the dirigible and landed my sword in the back of the dragon's head, and crash landed while playing a song, that was so cool. And like, oh my god. And I wish that, the NPCs weren't so the like the shopkeepers weren't so high level, like like
yeah.
and it's just communication between the dungeon masters and the players. Just a quick little, each player just bring up one wish and one star. Just kind of the dungeon master get positive feedback to know what he did well to do more of next session, and wishes to know like, oh, okay, that's something I can definitely include, or I can exclude that next time. Or
yeah.
See, I really like these because it's of course these can look different, and they all happen within the conversations that you have in while you play and in session 0. But I think having labels for them and clearing those labels up at the beginning of session 0 can make it more accessible to people who aren't so like outspoken. Maybe if someone's like got a concern and they're a little bit like apprehensive about it, or they don't want to like ruin the fun or make it seem like they're like being a downer. If those guidelines are set, like, we want people to do this, then it can make it a lot easier for them to express their concerns, express what they enjoy, and just overall have the campaign run a lot smoother.
Yeah.
I
think these are all things that you got to talk about. It's just it's easy to assume that you're all on the same page for this kind of stuff, because it's like, I've been playing D&D for a long time, and we're all friends outside of D&D, and like, we're all Democrats or Republicans or whatever, like, you're like, we're all from the same religious group, or we all work at the same place, like we're probably all on the same page when it comes to these kind of things. And boy, would you be surprised at the kind of stuff that people have, would expect, or things that you wouldn't expect someone to be against, or something like that. Like, something that's really common in a lot of D&D is like racism between like, orcs and dwarves, or elves and dwarves, or elves and orcs, or elves and gnomes, or elves and halflings, or elves and literally any other race.
Mostly elves.
Elves are causing a lot of problems. But exactly.
Right? Like, they're like, I don't really like that stuff. Like, it's annoying for me to feel like my character race choice is like negatively impacting the way he shows up in the world. Like, it's frustrating that everywhere I go, innkeepers and stuff are mean to me because I'm a bugbear, or because I'm whatever that bug race is with the forearms,
the Antillian.
It's like, it's so frustrating, like, that people scream and run away. It's like, it's fine if someone mentions like, oh, I haven't seen one of you around here before, but like, for it to constantly be like, I have to stay outside, and I have to, it's like, I hate that. Where for other players it's like, I love it.
Exactly.
It's what
Damn right, I'm the outcast. Feel me.
Like, maybe if you're playing an undead skeleton man, and it's like, oh, I can't go into the temple, like, great.
Hell yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect.
And that's like, it's so interesting.
It's all about communication and talking about those things. So, you can make a list of things that you want, or things that you don't want. And if you can't remember, just listen to this episode again. And write down
we'll have it up.
all of our amazing points.
It's also like all good things to just.
Or
really
if your DM doesn't think a session 0 is a good use of time, share this episode with them.
Yes,
share
absolutely. They might change their mind.
We are incredibly
play this episode at your group.
As your session 0. As your session 0, like -0 or whatever. At session -1, play this, and then that can help you at your session 0.
Oh my gosh,
Oh, so good.
Is there anything that you guys wish was talked about at a session 0 that didn't come up, that you realize now in hindsight, like, man, this has been a thing that I wish we did, or I wish we didn't do? Like, I know for this campaign, there's often, I feel like, the critical thing, we didn't do the crunchy criticals in this one, but I kind of miss it, and it's like, because it made criticals so much more exciting.
Yeah,
Um,
and so much more like nerve-wracking when the enemies were rolling. You were like so panicked.
yeah. Yeah, like
Definitely.
also like an old rule that I used to have was you can either roll double damage dice and see what you get, or you can just do max damage for your normal one roll plus
Yeah.
modifier. So it's like, what do I want to do? Or I think the other thing was you can roll one dice and just double the outcome.
Right.
Like,
There's a
those were
criticals
Yeah.
have a lot of different like
those were the three
flow to
things.
them for sure.
But the traditional one is roll double dice. But then one thing I'm really happy with is that we're doing the double advantage, right? So
Yes, that has
Yeah.
been really fun.
two things are giving you advantage rather than just having advantage and the other one's not adding to the advantage, you get a +5 in addition to the advantage. And then if you have triple advantage, you get a +10 in addition to having advantage. And if you have quadruple advantage, plus 15, 20, 25, 30, whatever. And then there was with maxing out, I think with six tipple, whatever,
Yeah, six triple advantage because that's plus 20 with advantage, right?
No, six
So it's
tuple
plus
is plus
25.
plus 25 plus advantage.
Yeah.
But it can't go
Now,
over what your normal max would be.
yeah, I said like whatever your natural max with a regular d20 it would be. So whatever your modifiers are plus a natural 20, that is your maximum no matter. So you can't because statistically speaking, a +5 with a roll of a d20 is significantly better than rolling 2 and choosing the higher of the two, because
Yeah.
you can get a total of 25, which is impossible with advantage.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's simply better. But if it's like, oh no, you cannot exceed what you can naturally do, therefore a roll that is nearly impossible is still nearly impossible for you, even if you roll, you know, with six tuple advantage.
Yeah.
It just means you're going to get a 23. If your maximum is a 23, you have a 23, no need to roll.
Yeah.
Right. However, if you are playing some bizarre ranger cleric,
Fighter, bard.
bard combination that has a natural,
A plus
a minimum
70.
of 27 and a maximum of 37 to your
Yeah.
persuasion rolls,
Yeah.
then yeah, you could absolutely use a sextuple advantage.
For those of you who
Yeah.
are wondering why that was so specific, there is absolutely a reason. We're living it
Yeah.
right
That's
now.
a real build you can make that one of our players is doing with
I don't know what level you need to be, but he's level 10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or he's level 11 now.
11. Yeah, and he was level 10, he could do it. So
Yeah.
but the most
So
bizarre, he's
for you guys,
so
for you guys though, what is the thing that you wish we had in our current campaign that you didn't bring up, or something that you're glad we don't have this time around?
I think one thing that I think like could have been really helpful in our session 0, because I really like where our campaign is now, but in the beginning I think we didn't have such a clear direction for our story. And we were sort of doing a lot of like side quests, and I think a lot of the people in the group were kind of excited about doing like more like narrative driven stuff with their characters. So I think kind of I think because we didn't really spend so much time talking about, especially as a group, what everyone wanted their character, like how much focus they wanted on their character and their character story, which I think is something that's really, it's just very useful to talk about, because eventually as campaigns sort of like go on, you'll naturally strike that middle ground where the players want to be, just like based on conversations, and then also like what your players choose to do. But it can be really helpful in the beginning.
I didn't I apologize for that. I just kind of was just kind of like, make sure you guys contact at least one of the other players and work on your backstories together and kind of mingle. All right, cool guys, well, that was a great session 0. Let's rather, I feel like I could have like been like, hey, how about you and you meet together, and I'd love for or how about everyone team up with someone else.
Yeah.
At
Just
least
more
one other
structure.
person.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that definitely could have made a difference. I think that it's definitely true that some players are gonna have more in like personal creation of their own backstories and more that they want to address and see and play than
yeah.
other characters. You know, some are just gonna be like, I want to follow the party and hit stuff, while others are like, I was born upon the mountaintop, struck and pulled from the fresh white snows, and I must return to like something like
Yeah. Yeah.
I am a dog that has been turned into a human, and I desire nothing more than to be turned back into a dog, so that I may return to my farm and bark at the pigs.
These are all bangers, by the way, Justin. I think these are great. Your thought, the one about the two, like the guy who got roped up with the criminal and now they're just both on the run together is such a brilliant idea, I think, for characters. Feel free to take that, anybody. That would be a great start.
Speaking of taking things, the only thing that I would have liked to add is actually something that we mentioned earlier on in the stream, which is your idea of spotlight. Like having moments where if we're specifically focusing in on role play, it's a powerful emotional moment that is specified so that everyone else, like all the other players, know what's going on and know to be involved and listen, and also not like break the scene. Because normally you'd think that would be easy to read, but for some people, they're just a little distracted.
I mean, I've even missed it as a dungeon master, where like there was a campaign, I think 3 campaigns ago. Ben, you were having an emotional moment, and I think I, as the dungeon master, had an NPC like cut you off, and it was appropriate for the thing, but like super frustrating as a player. Like, this is not going to happen again. I'm not going to get this opportunity, and like, I was really in the moment. I just feel like had I known, like it became super obvious to me 30 seconds after I interrupted you, but it was like kind of too late.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It happens. It's all right. And sometimes interruptions can kind of like carry the flow. Like an emotional moment has to end eventually. And if something comes in and the action is carried somewhere else, that totally works. But being able to have it known and specified and like, yes, this is going to be an emotionally powerful moment and we're going to defer energy to it, I think is really, really valuable. It's something that I would want. Not only to play in, but also if I ran a campaign again, then that's what I would want.
As a DM and as a player too, to be like, I'd like to call a spotlight. Like, my character's about to do something.
Yeah. I think just say spotlight. And then when you're like, just to clarify, if people are like still silent after a while and it's over for you, you can just be like, oh, end spotlight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, something. Oh yeah, Ben, were you gonna say something?
No, just that. Like
something we added in our session was, so we do a recap at the beginning of every session of what happened last week. So that's a great thing. And rather than it always falling on the dungeon master to kind of remind everyone what happened last week, I have everyone at the table roll a d20, and whoever gets the highest has to recap what happened last week. Unless you get a natural 1, then you have to recap.
And a nat 20, you can decide whoever.
You get to choose who gets to recap, right? It always kind of felt like kind of a punishment. So I was like, all right, let's make it a boon. And so I was like, okay, whoever wins the recap gets automatic double advantage for the session. So you just go ahead and chuck off, 2 ticks in your advantage box. You also get 10 temporary HP and 1 gold piece.
Yeah.
Oh, did people change their tunes?
And now everyone is like, oh, I wish I could. Recently, our last one I got because of a lot of random things. I got quadruple advantage.
Also, start the session. I give everyone advantage to start with.
Yeah.
Because it's just like it makes it less of a rare commodity and more fun to just kind of use it.
Advantage being inspiration.
Inspiration. Sorry,
and what's also really nice that we've started doing in our most recent campaign is that you get an advantage at the start of the game, and then by the end of the game, however many advantages you have, you lose basically. So it definitely Yeah, inspirations, because
Yeah.
oftentimes it's easy to kind of hoard them, or like, well, I got to save this for a really special time.
Yeah.
But if you kind of lose them at the end of the session, then you're gonna at least use your inspiration during the session, which I think is a good way to manage it.
Yeah, the other reason why it's good to do the recap, have your players recap, is because they will kind of inadvertently tell you what stood out to them. And so you kind of get a sense of what every player will enjoys at the table.
Yeah, what their exciting moments were, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Because without knowing it, the stuff that they remember is just that's what happened for them last session.
and that was what was important enough that they remembered. Yeah.
Because often as a dungeon master, I'll recap and like, and then the NPC told you guys about the secret location or whatever, and like they're like, oh yeah,
Oh,
and
we
it's like,
did
yeah,
meet
yeah,
that
you guys
guy.
don't care about that, huh?
Huh.
And vice on the other side, it's like, and then we fought that dragon, and it's like me as a dungeon master, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I guess
Yeah.
More
So
of
often
that.
you're like, oh yeah, you did do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, good fun.
Well, that concludes this session 0, guys. Thank you so
Yes.
much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want more of this, well, come back next Saturday.
Yeah.
We will be here. And
We
hope you will.
we stream these conversations live on Twitch. That's it for now. Maybe we'll do more platforms in the future. You can find us on YouTube, and we have a nice cute little video you can see of us, sort of. And then you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and a few other places. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We had a blast. We hope you did too.
Yep.
And it's closing time. Get out of my tavern.
All right, whatever.
All right. I don't have to go home though.
Last call was 2 hours ago.
Shit.
Get out.